From Season 3, Episode 8 is easily the most revealing episode of the season, perhaps even the entire show so far.
Charlie.
How do you know my name?
We're beginning to see how the many different stories of the show connect together.
It was the boy in white.
Whilst on the flip side, we catch a glimpse of the town's latest attempt to rip the community apart. Episode 8 packs a ton of answers but leaves even more questions, and now it's time to break it down.
Don't make me do this.
Before we jump in, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoy it, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. Now, with all that out of the way, let's break down From Season 3, Episode 8, titled Threshold.
Hello?
Now, in recent episodes, attention has turned to Julie and her time possessed, and although we thought all of that came to an end last season, it seems there's more there to still be discovered. Tension within the town is at an all-time high, with Jim and Tabitha quickly reaching boiling point, whilst the town's overall mysteries continue to deepen, which is shown through Victor, Elgin, and Tabitha. This time around, we pick up with the immediate aftermath of Tilly's murder. So between episodes, Boyd's became aware of what's happened and immediately takes Tabitha into the hut within the forest, away from the rest of the town for her own protection as well as theirs. She goes on to explain everything to him.
And I felt my hand reach for the shears.
That she's feeling a constant anger bubbling up inside of her, and back in the greenhouse, it well and truly took control. And although she was aware the entire time, she wasn't able to stop it. Almost like she no longer had control of the wheel. She's also coming to terms now that whatever's going on inside of her, it might not be a baby after all, but instead something far more sinister, and there's a huge reveal with that later on, which we'll come on to. Anyways, Boyd's taking it easy on her just like he did with Sarah. He's taken her a bowl of rotten crops to help keep her cravings in check, whilst he figures out the best way to cover up what she did. If it was pretty much anyone else in the town, they'd almost certainly end up in the box, and given that she's family to him now, he wasn't going to risk that being the outcome. Ellis stops by after Boyd leaves, with Fatima revealing her fear that it could happen again. Now, bizarrely, once Ellis leaves and she's well and truly alone, the drowned lady that Elgin's been seeing appears next to her. As we're heading towards the end of the season, the lines that separate which townsperson has what experience are starting to fade. Now, over at the Matthews house, Jim and Tabitha arrive back from the settlement. Now aware of her claims she used to dream of the place as a child, but not totally buying it, he attempts to make her understand the town knows far more about them than they initially thought, and that it knows exactly which buttons to press on them at any given moment. He tells her about the phone calls they'd received while she was away from someone or something claiming to be Thomas.
What?
That even after all they've been through, he isn't really behind what she's saying. Now, of course, we know she's telling the truth. How else would she have been able to describe the place to Jade without seeing it with her own eyes? But for Jim, who isn't in a know and wasn't there at the time, it's a pretty reasonable thought to have. Anyways, Jim realizes he's not getting through to her, so he opts for a different approach by going to the bar and confronting Jade, who he sees as her main accomplice in these adventures. He tells Jade it's done, that Tabitha's vulnerable, and he's not going to let him fill her mind with ideas that she's somehow the chosen one to free the kids and send everyone home. You could smell this confrontation coming from a mile off, and judging by the way things are going, I wouldn't put my money on it being the last one either. Anyways, Jade tells Jim that out of the two of them, he's the only one really doing anything right now to help everyone get home, including his family. And yeah, to be fair, he's the only one really taking Tabitha seriously as well and supporting her. Jim arrived in the town with all these ideas, but he's pretty much fell off since the radio situation. That really crushed his spirit and killed any hopes he had of realistically making it out of there alive. Jade tells him he's free to police his own kids how he sees fit, but on the other hand, Tabitha's a grown woman, and if he's not down with what she's doing, he should talk to her about it. Now, after Jade's heard enough and leaves...
Sorry, we're not done here.
Yeah, we fucking are, Jim.
Jim sits down with Henry, who pretty much echoes the advice Jade gave him, which Jim seems to take on his chest a bit more, as Henry's someone who, like him, knows what it's like to have a family and experience something very similar to what he's going through right now with Miranda. Now, keeping it in the family, we see Julie returning to the ruins she came across with Randall during their drive. He wasn't up for returning there again, so she took Ethan along for an adventure. Jim would be fuming. Anyways, Julie tells Ethan the ruins are almost calling out to her, and with his track record of dropping knowledge nuggets by linking the town's stories he's heard or games he's played, she asks his advice on what to do, and he tells her the hero needs to be brave, that where they're at is called a threshold, and she needs to step inside. They enter together hand in hand. However, Julie goes through the experience alone. and it doesn't affect Ethan in the slightest. We actually see Julie witness and interact here with 4 different points in time. She sees when herself, Muriel, and Randall were chained to the walls in the tower, when Martin was there as Boyd was in the hole. Turns out she was actually the one that threw the rope down to him in the first place. And then we see her venture into the tunnels, where we can hear the voices of Victor and Tabitha trying to navigate their way out of them. We also hear the Ankui kids dying too. The craziest part of all of this though is that she's actually laying on the floor the entire time. However, through this vision, or whatever it was, she was able to interact and change events that happened previously by throwing the rope down. And I've got a theory on how Julie's reveal here is going to play a huge part in the story going forwards, which we'll get onto in a moment. Anyways, Tilly's body was finally discovered by the townspeople, and an investigation led by Kenny and Acosta begins. We know Boyd wants to cover up Fatima's involvement. However, Ellis wants to tell the truth, thinking the people will understand. Donna, in what's becoming quite a habit of hers, walks in during the middle of their conversation.
Look, I have a whole lot of people up there just ready to march on Sarah's house with torches.
And she believes, along with some others, that Sarah's the one behind it, given she's got a pretty shaky track record, to say the least, of murdering people there. Now, she makes a great point by saying hiding from the monsters every night is one thing, but living with a killer among them is another. Like, if they can't trust one another in a place like that, they're pretty much done for as a community. I think the entity behind all of this had that in mind when they did whatever they did to Fatima. It's likely just another tool they're using to break the town from within. Yeah, the threat to do so was made directly just to Boyd, however, inevitably, it'll also have a dramatic effect on everyone else around him too. Anyways, Boyd's pretty much been cornered here. He's adamant it wasn't Sarah, but he's got no way to prove it, so he's left with no choice than to roll with his son's plan to reveal all. Now, initially, he thinks he'll be able to give Fatima the Sarah treatment, keeping her away from the town for a while, letting it all blow over and integrate her back in slowly, giving the people time to accept it. However, Donna tells him it worked back then, but they never accepted it, and it wouldn't work this time because they don't believe in Boyd as much as they once did. Although Donna considers Fatima one of her own at this point, she can't take one person's side over the rest of the town and gives Boyd an ultimatum. Either he tells everyone the truth or she will. So yeah, Boyd's now going along with Ellis's original plan of him and Fatima living away from everyone else in the forest together, and that he's going to drop into town twice a week to grab some supplies that Boyd will leave out for him. Now, Elgin, we're seeing a pretty interesting story develop with him of late, which continues when his camera takes yet more photos of locations where he isn't at. Now, last episode, this led to the hidden underground bunker where we spoke to the lady he'd been seeing. We don't know exactly what their conversation went like. However, we can gather that it involved Elgin needing to ensure Fatima and in turn the baby's safety from everyone else. This involved him going to the clinic and extracting his own blood to sustain her, and whilst doing so, the camera then prints a picture of where Boyd's hiding her. Anyways, Elgin goes and lures her out of the hut by telling her they found somewhere safer for her to stay and that Ellis is waiting for her there now. Of course, this wasn't the case at all, and I think the drowned lady has put it into Elgin's head that the baby will be the key to their way home. I doubt that's true, but it's just what he believes. Anyways, Fatima wants to head back to the hut and wait for Ellis there. However, when she tries to go just before Elgin stops her, she falls to the floor in pain. Whatever's inside of her doesn't want her to leave. Elgin advises it is a baby after all that she's carrying, but bizarrely it's just not hers. Now, the plot thickens as we catch up with Victor, who's struggling with making Jasper the doll talk. Sarah's not hitting the right notes.
Hello, Victor. Do you want to play today?
And he enlists the help of Tabitha, as she's helped him remember things before. Perhaps she can help him remember how to get a tune out of Jasper. It did pay off as he remembers it was in a church when he heard the conversation between Christopher and Jasper take place. However, he then remembers that the doll wasn't actually speaking to Christopher in this moment at all, that it was the boy in white instead. He told Christopher the answers to the end lie in the beginning, which was when the Ankui kids were hurt by the ones they loved and trusted the most, that they were born in the dark and murdered in the dark. Someone once told the kids a story that gave them hope, which they then poured into the stones they laid upon, creating the tree roots which influenced the symbol Christopher and more recently Jade had been seeing. Christopher was actually instructed to go into the tree himself, however he didn't, which led Miranda to doing it instead after hearing the story from Victor. And perhaps that's the reason she never made it back, because she wasn't the one supposed to go in there in the first place. Now, initially, it does come across as broken bits of information Victor's relaying here, and it will most likely sound that way to the townspeople as well. However, given what we know from Julie's experience in the ruins,
Julie.
How do you know my name?
where she could effectively go back in time and potentially interact and change things, coupled with the fact that Boy in White actually said the key to the end lies in the beginning, which was before the kids died, I think the end, or at least the next big step in this story, we'll see Julie and perhaps even Randall and Muriel too, as they both have a connection to the ruins, go back to before the Ankui kids were murdered and try and save them, preventing the curse of the town ever being created. if that really is what started it all. Now, I think there's going to be way more to it than that. Like, that's just a really simplified version of it. Like, to actually leave the town for good, I think everyone will need to play their roles, like Tabitha and Jade as well, but it's definitely the biggest step in the right direction to date. When you add everything we know from this season and the previous two together, it becomes clearer that everyone has a part to play in figuring out a puzzle that right now, once completed, probably shows the Ankui kids being saved. Yeah, when you take a step back and take a look at not just this episode or season, but the show as a whole, you can really see the experiences everyone's going through on an individual level, whether it be the Ankui kids, the tree symbol, the boy in white, or the ruins. It's all tied together somewhere along the lines. It's revealing itself to be one big collected experience rather than multiple smaller ones. It's almost like a puzzle where you need all the pieces in the right place at the right time in order to see the full picture. You could even put in what's going on with Fatima there too. Perhaps whatever it is growing inside of her could also be a part of the key to escaping. However, it could also be just another way the town wants to tear him down. Overall, I have to say I really enjoyed this one. It's one of my favourite episodes of the season with all the reveals and new questions it leaves behind. I'm looking forward to seeing where Jim and Tabitha go from here and whether Henry's chat with him will make a difference. With only 2 episodes to go, there's also the potential for another big character death to take place, which could rock the whole town as we await season 4. Yeah, I think the main takeaway this episode was the Julie reveal and its potential link to what Victor remembered in the church. Do you think that could be their key to escaping, or at least a step closer to solving the mystery? As always, drop your thoughts, theories, and wildest speculations in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.